Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Adventures TV. Can you believe it's our fifth episode already? Famia, this is the fifth consecutive week where we've had this live conversation. I'm super excited. How are you feeling?
I'm super proud of us. I'm
Yeah,
super proud of how consistent we've been and like just how on it we've been. I mean, I'm sure people have feedback about things we can improve, but the fact that we've even done it is crazy to me. So we
good. We
pat
have
ourselves on the
for
back.
ourselves. Today, I was watching like a short Instagram clip where Snoop Dogg was basically saying, I want to thank me. So I want to thank us, Famia. We're doing great, honey. Let's big ourselves up.
Let's wait to hear back from the audience, but we are trying and will incorporate and appreciate any feedback. Anyway, let's get into it. Yes.
Let's get into it. So last week we were talking about online dating and whether people just presume people are dating online as a way to just get an easy hookup. And we concluded that wasn't the case, but that led Fami and I to have a discussion about interracial dating because I was sharing my experience of experimenting with online dating, where a couple of years ago I decided to set myself a challenge. I thought, I want to write a book about how to find love online. And so I signed up on Match.com, a dating platform. And there was a particular week where I went out on a date every single day of the week. And one of the things I did, right, was I specified the racial background of the person I wanted to date. And I said I wanted to date only black men. Famia, it was a struggle.
It was a hassle, eh? You didn't know.
First of all, the majority of people who were basically liking my profile and approaching me for dates were white men. And then it felt like the options in terms of black men were rather scanty. And so, based on that, that's the topic for today. Is getting your swell on selling out? Is dating outside of your race selling out? And we want to focus on this from a Black woman's perspective, right? So this is going to center on Black women's experiences. And Famia, I'm going to put you on spot. I know you've had your swell on. Tell me, what was that experience like? Did you feel like you were selling out?
Only once. I like the way I have to say only once. But yes, I was in a serious relationship with a Caucasian guy for almost 4 years. And I totally felt like I was selling out. I've always been very black, as my mother, like she does it with the fingers. Black. Sometimes she goes black. Anyway, I've always been very black. I've always been really invested in social justice, Pan-Africanism, really sort of dedicated to eradicating racism and being, a black person who's there for black people. And so for me, falling in love with a white guy was probably the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. He started as a friend, and I actually didn't think that he was interested in me, because I thought that he dated men. And so when I found out that he dated women and he was interested in me, by then we had already formed sort of a relationship. I call it the access that women give to gay men and priests, where you don't put any guard up because you think that you're not an option. And so I think because he got that access, we fell for each other really, really quickly. And it was a huge existential crisis for me because I was black. I'd always felt like black love was, just sort of an act of self-affirmation, living in this world that, makes everything that's black seem like it's worse or it's less, for me, being with somebody who was black just seemed natural. And then all of a sudden, here comes this white boy. He wasn't just white like white. He was like white, like blonde hair, blue eyes, climbs mountains, skis. I mean, like, he was not a down white person, but he was extremely woke. I mean, probably the most woke person I've met of any race. And we just sort of fell for each other, and it was a big deal. It was a really, really big deal for me. And unfortunately, I think by the time I finally sort of realized I don't care anymore was when the relationship ended. So it was a unique relationship, and I don't necessarily think I would do it again. A white man is not what I'm looking for. It just sort of happened. And I suppose if it happened again, I would try to be open to it just because, it's sort of what the universe sends you. But yes, in short, I have dated a white man. And yes, I felt like I was selling out. People felt like I was selling out. People treated me rather badly. I dealt with a lot of the assumptions and critiques and stereotypes that come from being a Black woman dating a white guy, whether a Black woman who's perceived to be African American. So people feel like, oh my God, you're betraying Black men. We went through this horrible historical experience together. You're supposed to be down for us. Or being in Ghana, dating a white man, where everybody thought that I was one of those girls you buy for 2 weeks. And a friend was interrogated by her manager who saw me in a restaurant. The manager called her. I was like, your friend, she seemed like a very decent girl, but why is she with that white man? Is she looking for papers? And I dealt with both sides of the spectrum. So yeah, it was wahala. It was a lot of wahala.
And just to give some context, because you and I were chatting about how it's different, the experience you have as a Black woman dating a white man in the US, for example, is different to the experience you have as a Black woman, a Ghanaian, dating a woman and dating a white man in Ghana. So can we talk a little bit about that, and why that's different? What's the context?
Ooh. So I think that there's a little bit less stigma of being an African woman who dates a white man because of colonialism and white supremacy and this sort of sense we've had of our own inferiority all the time. Being white or being with white people is very desirable, at least to most Ghanaian women I know of a certain, sort of background. And people are quite free about it. They'll say, hey, I want to marry a white man. They are more enlightened. They are kinder. I'll have light-skinned babies, And then when you marry a white guy or you date a white guy, I think what people tend to assume in Ghana is that you are cheap or you are sexually promiscuous or you have ulterior motives. But they don't tend to see it as a betrayal of the race, right? Because it's a racially homogenous country, like most African countries. So our sense of Blackness isn't political in the way that Blackness is for people who grow up in America, who grew up in the UK, who grew up in the diaspora. Because where we're from, Blackness isn't necessarily sort of a political state of affiliation or allegiance. We don't have any of those layers to it. It's just you're Ghanaian, you might be fair, you might be dark, you might be Ashanti, you might be Ewe, whatever. But I think for people, for Black women in America specifically, but the West in general, just because of the history of how Black people got there and the history of what Black people have been through, and particularly how for a lot of Black people, I think in America, as a Black woman living in America and assumed to be African American, there's this dynamic here where African American women have a sort of dual identity in the way that I don't find African women to. So sort of, yes, there's all that oppression that comes from being of the feminine gender, but then there's also this layer of being the protector of Black men because they were so historically abused during and after slavery. And, they're the people the prison industrial complex sucks in. They're the people who are likely to be profiled. They're more likely to be shot, right? So there's this protectiveness that we feel as Black women over Black men here. And that protectiveness sort of extends to, we can't betray them. We can't date other people. We can't, seem like a self-hating bedwench from slavery times. It's a much deeper, more layered thing about self-hate and about, politics and about history. And like there's stuff on it that isn't there with Black women and white men in Ghana. So I think that's the difference. Like ours is like one layer and then theirs is like 10 layers. And so it makes it more difficult.
And then it's like in the US, right? Black women have the pressure not to date white men, but hello, whenever I see a successful Black man from the US, who do you see on his arm? But a white woman.
Or a racially ambiguous woman. Now it's always, she looks Latino, we can't really figure out what she is, but it's not really Black. it's not pure black. It's not, distinctively black. And I think that that's definitely something.
Yes, it is an issue. But you know what? I mean, the other aspects to this as well is when I think of my childhood, I've always been very much the kind of person I am now. Stubborn, not really stereotypically what people expected a good Ghanaian girl to be like. And people used to say to me things like, oh, as for you, only a white man will marry you.
Yep.
And this false idea that white men are somehow more open-minded, more tolerant, more, I don't know what it is.
Enlightened. Right? I think that the sense that they're more enlightened.
And I feel like that's just internalized, some internalized-ish, And sometimes the people telling you this are black men themselves, and you're thinking, wow. And I was told this as a child several times, But then I never ever felt like, for me, I don't know, it sounds kind of bad. And I have to say that, like, all this time we've been blogging on adventures, I've never written about interracial relationships because it sounds horrible to say that in general, I'm not attracted to somebody because of their race. Is that funny? Is that me? But I don't feel attracted to white men.
See, this is an interesting thing, huh? Because it's that sort of thing of preference versus discrimination, preference versus prejudice, right? And so if you say you're not attracted to a certain race, it sounds kind of messed up. And I think particularly if you haven't unpacked it, it's really messed up. So you kind of have to ask yourself, why don't I find these people attractive? What is it about what I've learned or what I've been taught or what I've been socialized to believe makes these people unattractive? If you unpack all of that and they're still unattractive, then they're just not your preference, right? But if you don't do that kind of emotional and mental work to figure out why you don't consider these people viable options, then you might be working with prejudice. So I think not finding white men attractive is not necessarily messed up if you've thought about it and you have some deep personal sort of reason to it that doesn't have anything to do with societal stuff. Because I always used to say that for me, it was like white guys were pictures and black guys were people. So I could walk down the street and I wouldn't care about how I looked until I saw a black guy. I thought Brad Pitt was pretty or cute, but he was cute in the way like a picture was cute, like a painting was cute. He wasn't like real, but like Idris Elba was real, And so I was never attracted to white guys, and this guy just sort of snuck in. So I think maybe that's the difference, that if it's a prejudice, no one can sneak in regardless of how much they connect with you. And then if it's just a preference, you might find somebody who can make you overcome that preference just because you feel such a deep connection to them. So that's what I think.
So, I was telling you about the time that I was basically going on a date every evening whilst I was in Match. At that time, I lived in the UK. So eventually I gave up and went on a date with this white guy. In fact, I think a lot of my dates that week ended up being with white guys. But there was one particular guy that we got on quite well, and we saw each other for about a month, and I was like, oh, okay, this is somebody I could date, until he changed his mind and decided I wasn't for him, which was hella annoying. I was like, after me not wanting to date white men, you've made me like you, now you're changing your mind. But then the other kind of concern I have, right, is I worry about the ways in which Black women are fetishized, right? I worry about the kind of fantasies that white men have about Black women. I worry some of this is like linked into really horrible stuff stemming from like slavery and colonization, and feeling Black women as something that have to be tasted or experimented with, And I think for me personally, because I'm so aware of all of these issues, it will be really hard to date a white man, because I'll be worried that actually it's not me, the actual person he's into, but into this idea, and into this, seem as a bit of an experiment, something to try out, to have fun with,
No, yes.
All of the cultural reasons, yeah.
You're totally speaking my truth, because that was the issue for me with dating this white boy. It was like, what is he seeing? What lens is he looking through? What stuff like from society has built up? I have a whole book of poetry about this about this dilemma, and I think for me, I think it's a very legitimate fear because a lot of fetishization does go on. I think Black women have been characterized as, these jungle Jezebels, and we could do all these acrobatic things, and we're more animalistic, and there's a whole bunch of problematic stuff, deeply problematic stuff. And I think that is a very reasonable fear, because I think if I took a poll, the white guys who fit that will be significantly more than the white guys who want to date you just because they like you, and don't have any layers to it. And for me and my ex, that was a very big thing. Like, I mean, I checked, I vetted, I would ask him questions, I'd pass the question here, I'd try to like trick him. I was really invested in trying to find out how he saw me as a person and what his knowledge of Black stereotypes informed about me. I remember one day we were watching TV and this BET video came on, and it was one of those shake your booty BET videos, and it was just this close up of this Black woman's ass jiggling. The way I looked at him to see his reaction, I was like, whatever he does with his face shows how he really feels. And I mean, it's funny now how much weight I put on it, but I was very, very invested in, am I a fetish? Is this temporary? Is this personal? Or it's just a fantasy? So I think that's legitimate. And I think you just have to vet the person. You just have to vet and vet and vet and vet. And then if they pass, you're like, all right, homie, we can do this.
And that's like a lot of pressure to put a relationship through, right? I mean, I think it's important. I mean, I don't think we should choose our partners lightly. But also when I think, especially of our Black sisters in the diaspora, I honestly believe, in spite of my own personal preference, I honestly believe that they should be open to dating white men and be open to dating men from all races, frankly. Because the truth is, Black men are dating people from all races. And it seems to be only Black women who seem to be holding on to this idea that I have to date somebody from my own race. I was chatting to a friend. She's a Black woman, Ghanaian, who lives in the UK, was born in the UK, so Ghanaian and British. And she decided to sign up to a dating, matchmaking service, right? Because she tried the various dating websites and hadn't had much luck in terms of like the kind of men that she thought she'd like to meet. And this was like an exclusive matchmaking service where you have to pay quite a lot of money so they can set you up on dates. And they freely told her that they never get Black men on their books. When they get Black men, they get snapped up like this. And so, they couldn't take her money and they couldn't register her because they just wouldn't find her a Black man. Can you imagine? I know, for me, I laugh it.
Black men are unicorns.
I was just like, oh my God, seriously. So I feel like as Black women, we have to let go of this issue, the sense of
loyalty.
Yes, of loyalty, because the loyalty is not returned.
Yes.
And I think we have to find love wherever we can find it.
I agree. Life is short, man. If you're spending your whole life waiting for the IBM, the ideal Black man to pop up, Charlie, that IBM might never pop up. And I think when you put so much weight on a man having to check these boxes, right? Because for a lot of women, he can't just be Black. He has to be Black and successful. He has to be Black, so there are all these boxes that this man has to take in addition to sharing your cultural heritage or your racial heritage. And I think it's a lot of pressure. So I agree with you. People should broaden their options. Even Black women in Africa, I think, should broaden their options. It just should not be linked to the kind of white supremacy, problematic post-colonial complexes that at least the sort of general sense of marrying a white man has in Ghana, And so I think Black women need options and we should explore our options. Absolutely. And find happiness where we find it and not cut people off just because they aren't the right race or the right box. Because you might be surprised what you'll find.
And that's a huge issue, right? Like, especially for those of us on the African continent, that, you know, we've kind of also bought into the opposite stereotype about white men, that they're somehow better, that they somehow treat women better, you know, and it's false. I mean, we had a recent post on Adventures a few weeks ago now, where this woman was sharing her experiences about dating a white man, about how abusive he was, but not leaving the relationship because everybody was saying to her, "Where are you going to find a white man like this?" You know, and that really made me sad. That really made me sad because if a man is trash, he's trash. He's not going to be trash because he's from a particular racial background or from a particular class background. That's just down to that person, you know?
I had a cousin who married a German guy, and she was very much sort of, she had grown up in the village. She was very excited. She was always sort of bragging about him and whatever. And then they started having problems. Nana, what's this man put up? He would call her the N word in front of their children. His mother would cuss her out. I mean, he was horrible. So yeah, Bema Biaya Bema, like trash man is a trash man is a trash man, regardless of where they are from. But I think that that stereotype that white guys are somehow better or more enlightened or more open or whatever is ridiculous. And particularly when black men say it, almost like an insult of like, oh, we can't deal with you. Only a white man can deal with you and all these, you know, because I get that a lot as well. I find it really, really, really irritating. And also like, dude, think more highly of yourself.
Exactly.
You know? Like, how can you, a Ghanaian man who's interested in me, somehow think that some white guy, just by dint of being white and growing up in the West, is automatically going to treat me better? What skills does he have that you don't have? What skills does he have that you can't learn? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely. So as usual, I want to pose a couple of questions to those of you who are watching. Have you ever dated somebody from a different race? What were your experiences like? Did you feel like you were sellouts? How did you deal with those feelings of conflict? Share your thoughts in the comments box with us. How shall we wrap this up, Famia?
I actually let me say this because I feel like my endorsement of black women stepping out might not be qualified enough, because this is a thing, huh? I think black people's internalized stuff about race is so strong. Now there's this sort of trend of black women who marry white men or black women who marry Asian men having this idealized thing. So I watch a lot of YouTube, and there are at least 15 families, maybe 25, of black women with a guy who's not black, and they make a family YouTube channel to sort of show their lives, and people love it. And the comments are all black women, and they're so impressed with the white guy, and they're so impressed with the kids, and somehow mixed kids are more beautiful, and there's all the stuff going on. And it's almost turned into this reverse fetishization, or this sort of investment in your happily ever after being with a white man. And I think that one too, like you said, they're opposite experiences, but particularly that we as a community need to find a way to root for black love as well, right? Because like the pendulum has swung the other way, and now we're all go girl, you know, for the black woman with a white guy. And I think that that's wonderful, but his wonderfulness isn't because he's white. His wonderfulness is just because she found someone. And black women, out of frustration, shouldn't feel like black love is not an option. If you connect with a person who's not black, fine. But sort of feeling like niggas ain't shit, I'm going to find me a white man, I think that is also problematic. And the degree to which these families on YouTube get idealized and you know, romanticized really bothers me. So I think, yeah, black women, explore your options, but, you know, don't lose sight of good black men. Don't lose sight of, you know, men in your community. You know, just keep your eyes open to all colors, to the rainbow.
Yes, keep your eyes open to the rainbow. Literally, man, woman. I feel like people shouldn't limit themselves. If you're looking for love, you're looking, you know, for somebody, a human being. So keep all of those options open. and share your thoughts. This is the end. We will see you next week with another exciting topic.
And if you have experiences of dating outside your race, please let us know.
Yes, yes. See you next week.
Bye, guys. Take care.